The front office just made a phone call that could signal something bigger is brewing in Allen Park. And when you hear the name that's coming back into the building, you're going to understand why this move matters more than it appears on the surface. We're talking about a player who was part of this organization's draft class just months ago. Someone the coaching staff believed in enough to use a valuable draft pick on. And now he's getting a second chance to prove he belongs in Honolulu blue and silver. This isn't just another practice squad signing that flies under the radar. This is a strategic move that tells us everything we need to know about how this front office operates, how they identify talent, and how they're building something special for the long haul. Welcome back to Lions News Fan Report, your home for breaking news, exclusive updates, and in-depth analysis on our beloved Detroit Lions. I'm bringing you the latest developments that matter most to true Lions fans who live and breathe this team every single day. So here's what went down, and this is where things get really interesting for our defensive future. The Detroit Lions have been on an absolute tear this season, dominating opponents and establishing themselves as legitimate Super Bowl contenders. But championship teams don't just rest on their current success. They're constantly looking ahead, constantly evaluating talent, and constantly making moves that might not make headlines today, but could pay massive dividends down the road. That's exactly what we're seeing with this latest roster move. And it's the kind of forward-thinking strategy that separates great organizations from mediocre ones. Let me take you back to this past April, when the NFL draft was taking place and the Lions were making their selections. In the 6th round, the organization made a pick that caught the attention of draft analysts who understand defensive line play. They selected a defensive end out of Boise State, a player who had spent 4 years in college absolutely terrorizing offensive linemen and quarterbacks in the Mountain West Conference. This wasn't a flashy first-round pick that gets all the media attention and the primetime interview. This was a developmental prospect, the kind of player that Brad Holmes and his scouting department have become experts at identifying and developing into contributors. The player in question put together an impressive college career that deserves recognition. Over 4 seasons with the Broncos, he appeared in 47 games, which tells you about his durability and consistency. He wasn't a guy who flashed for 1 season and disappeared. He was a constant presence on that defensive line, game after game, season after season. His production numbers are what really jump off the page. 120 total tackles and 23.5 sacks over his collegiate career. Those sack numbers are elite for a college defensive end, averaging nearly 6 sacks per season over his 4 years. That kind of production doesn't happen by accident. It happens because a player has the technique, the motor, and the instincts to consistently win his matchups and get to the quarterback. The Lions drafted him with the 174th overall pick in the 6th round. They signed him to a standard 4-year rookie contract worth $4,429,892. For a 6th-round pick, that's the going rate. And it represented a commitment from the organization to develop him within their system. The coaching staff saw something in his film, something in his athletic profile, that made them believe he could contribute to this defense. Aaron Glenn and his defensive staff have proven they can develop pass rush, and this player fit the mold of what they look for. But then training camp happened, and this is where the story took an unfortunate turn. As we all know, training camp is a brutal evaluation period where players are pushed to their physical limits. The competition is fierce, the practices are intense, and unfortunately, injuries happen. Near the end of camp, this defensive end suffered an injury that required the team to make a difficult decision. Rather than keeping him on the roster while he recovered, the Lions waived him with an injury settlement, which is a standard procedure in the NFL when a player gets hurt during camp. It's not a reflection of his talent or potential. It's simply a business decision that allows both sides to move forward while the player focuses on getting healthy. Now, here's where this story gets exciting for us Lions fans. The organization just announced that they've signed this defensive end back to the practice squad. And that tells us everything we need to know about how they view his long-term potential. Think about it. The Lions could have moved on completely, could have looked at other options, could have brought in a different player. But they didn't. They stayed patient. They waited for him to get healthy, and now they're bringing him back into the fold. That's not something you do for just any player. That's something you do when you believe someone has real potential to contribute to your football team. The player we're talking about is Ahmed Hassanein, the 23-year-old defensive end who's now getting his second opportunity to make an impact with the Detroit Lions, and I'm genuinely excited about what this means for our defensive depth moving forward. Hassanein brings exactly the kind of attribute that Aaron Glenn loves in his pass rusher. He's got length, he's got athleticism, and most importantly, he's got that relentless motor that you need to be successful rushing the passer in the NFL. Those 23.5 sacks at Boise State weren't flukes. They were the result of a player who understands hand placement, who knows how to use leverage, and who never gives up on a play. At 23 years old, Hassanein is still incredibly young with plenty of room to develop. The practice squad is the perfect place for him right now. He'll get to learn from guys like Avid and Hutchinson. He'll get to work with one of the best defensive line coaches in football. And he'll get to absorb Aaron Glenn's defensive system without the pressure of having to contribute immediately on game day. This is how you build sustainable success in the NFL. You draft players, you develop them, you give them time to grow, and eventually, they become contributors who help you win championships. What I love about this move is what it says about our front office's evaluation process. Brad Holmes and his staff clearly did their homework on Hassanein before the draft. They saw something special in his tape, something that made them confident enough to use a draft pick on him. The injury was an unfortunate setback, but it didn't change their evaluation of his talent. Now that he's healthy, they're bringing him back because they still believe in what they saw initially. That kind of consistency in evaluation is what builds championship rosters. Let's also talk about the timing of this move. We're deep into the season now, and the Lions are in the thick of a playoff push. The fact that they're adding Hassanein to the practice squad right now suggests they're thinking about more than just this week's game. They're thinking about January. They're thinking about February. And they're thinking about building depth that could be crucial if injuries strike during the playoffs. Having a young, talented pass rusher developing on your practice squad is exactly the kind of depth that championship teams need. I want to hear from you, the Lions faithful who make this community what it is. What do you think about bringing Ahmed Hassanein back to the practice squad? Are you excited about his potential as a pass rusher? Do you think he can develop into a contributor for this defense? How important is it for the Lions to continue developing young talent even while we're competing for a championship? Drop your thoughts in the comments below because I genuinely want to know how you're feeling about this move and what you expect from Hassanein moving forward. Here's my final take on this situation. The Lions signing Ahmed Hassanein back to the practice squad is exactly the kind of smart, forward-thinking move that championship organizations make. This isn't about making a splash or generating headlines. This is about identifying talent, staying patient through adversity, and building sustainable depth for the long term. Hassanein showed enough at Boise State to earn a draft pick, and clearly, the coaching staff still believes in his potential. At 23 years old with elite college production, he's got all the tools to develop into a valuable piece of this defense. The practice squad gives him the perfect opportunity to learn, grow, and prepare himself for when his number gets called. If you want to stay on top of every roster move, every strategic decision, and every development with the Detroit Lions, make sure you hit that subscribe button and turn on notifications for Lions News Fan Report. I'm here every single day bringing you the content that matters most to true Lions fans. Let's keep this conversation going. Let's support our team, and let's get ready for what could be a historic season. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you in the next one. Pride.